Zoom recording right now. Here they come.
Oop, I think we got people joining. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Oh, we've got some video people. Okay, bear with us. This is our first Zoom webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, hello. For our webinar, our first webinar since taking ZingTrain virtual, we're so thrilled to be here with you again, learning together from afar. I know we're all kind of adapting to this new way of working, and we're just really glad to be with you again. Before we dive into today's session, there's just a couple of things I want to talk about housekeeping-wise, but before I do that, I thought I might do some introductions here. ZingTrain folks, Zingermans folks, perhaps we can wave as I do the introductions and we do roll call here. My name is Emily Sandilands. I am here live from my dining room. I'm the community builder here at ZingTrain, so I handle our marketing. I'm thrilled to be joined by my esteemed colleagues. We have Mara, oh, there's Joanie Hales. She's a ZingTrain trainer and a longtime Zingermans employee. We have Mara Ferguson, who is our keynote liaison. She's also helps me a lot with marketing, also a longtime Zingermans employee. And then of course we have the man of the hour, Ari Weinzweig, one of the founding partners here at Zingermans and the CEO. Hi, Ari. Before we dive in, hi. Ari's
just scrolling through all the people's names.
Yeah, we've got a lot of
y'all. Hi, everybody.
With us. So today we're going to be talking for about 30 minutes. Joanie and Ari will be talking for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A. And so Mara and I are going to be monitoring the question and answer box. You can see at the bottom of your Zoom screen there's a little chat box. Go ahead and click on that. Feel free to submit questions, enthusiasms, anything on your mind. We'll be monitoring those, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can before we wrap up today's session. Should we not get to your questions today, we will be getting back to you with answers probably in the next day or two. One of the questions we always get during webinars, live with webcasts, anything like that, is will we be recording today's session? And we are recording today's session, so we will be sending you a copy of the recording probably in the next 24 hours or so. So look for that in your email inboxes. Your microphones are muted and your video is turned off, but that doesn't mean we want you to stay quiet. So again, feel free to submit questions in the chat box. And I think housekeeping wise, that is it. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ari and Joanie to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. As Emily said, my name is Joanie. I did put my headphones in. My children are home with me, so I was trying to make sure you couldn't hear them. You may see them make a special appearance, as they often do while I'm on Zoom calls right now. But as Emily said, I'm a trainer at ZingTrain. I've worked in our organization. This summer, it'll actually be 17 years. So I've really grown up within Zingermans. I started working with Ari back when the Roadhouse first opened. I would say we have spent the bulk of our time together, not necessarily just at the Roadhouse, but we really got to know each other through Camp Bacon when I was the camp director for many years and Ari was helping lead that. I will say, I consider Zingermans obviously the bulk of my professional career as an adult, and the organization has really shaped who I am, and what I've learned both professionally and personally is from Zingermans. And even though Ari won't want to hear it or be uncomfortable hearing it, a large part of that is because of him and because of the lessons and the philosophies that he teaches us. So I'm really excited to get to ask him some questions. And this is probably the longest, Ari, you and I have ever not seen each other in person.
Yeah, I know.
It's
seriously.
been 6 weeks, so it's been kind of odd, but it's
17
nice to see
years.
you again. In 17 years. Other than maybe a maternity leave I had, this is probably the longest we haven't spent time together.
That's
so
true.
It's nice to see you. Nice to see your face. So I have to ask, and we'll kind of get started.
Okay, so I'm going to sit right here and do my best.
Perfect. And it's also nice I get to see the train offices. I haven't been there in 7 or 8 weeks either.
Yeah, I want to go through the whole list and say hi to everybody.
Oh,
but
sure, go
Tracy, Sinjin, there's a ton of good people. Daryl Dash, everybody. Julie's on there. So hi, everybody.
Thanks, Ari. I do think most of the people, when I looked through the list as well, I recognized a lot of names, a lot of the organizations. And so I think a lot of the people on this are familiar with Zingermans and how it used to be, as I think what you've kind of coined the BC before COVID. Can you give a current state of Zingermans and fill people in on where we are today?
I can give, yes, an approximate.
Yeah.
So let's see, where should we start, Joanie? ZingTrain, you could probably do that better than me, but stop coming to training seminars. Keynotes are kind of out. Travel is out. So ZingTrain is, I'm getting tired of the word pivoted. ZingTrain has rearranged its priorities and is now start to do these virtual trainings. So that's where that's at. We're going to try to build it back up from almost nothing over the last months. Similarly, I'm starting with the low end. Food tours completely has stopped. Christy Brayblack, who's the partner, actually has a that I'm not going to announce yet because she hasn't told everybody else in the ZCAB, but I'm excited about that. And Cornman Farms, which Joanie, you also could probably fill in better than me, but things are out. But Kieran and Tabitha and everybody have been doing, I think, a really great job of coming up with creative ways to stay engaged with their clients. You know, some dates are moved, lots of conversations, obviously people's emotional anxiety around weddings and that sort of stuff is high enough anyway, let alone now under all this, but they're doing prepared foods out of there. So that's sort of the low end of things. The high end is mail order, which is, you know, the shower in the moment or whatever metaphor you want to use. We're limited a little bit by, you know, following proper spacing. But nevertheless, we're up significantly over normally be doing this time of year. So kudos to everybody over there for that work. And everybody else is kind of, the three restaurants, Deli, Miss Kim, and Roadhouse are all running, I don't know, 35, 40% of what the sales might be. Creamery and coffee, I'm going to estimate about, and candy about 50% maybe, and that's mostly through wholesale, a little bit through retail. About 65, maybe even up to 70 last week was good, so maybe a little higher. In great part because we wholesale to mail order, which is booming, and also to the upscale groceries. And one of the interesting phenomena that's come out of this, which some of the people on the call will already know, is other than people who have celiacs, gluten now seems to be the go-to, and so bread sales are dominating the top 10 at mail order.
Great, thank you. You kind of answered this question in a few ways, and I know you don't like hierarchical questions, so I'm not going to ask what was the biggest surprise, but what have been some of the biggest surprises in the businesses throughout this time?
What have been some of the biggest surprises?
Yeah, maybe it's that bread has made a comeback.
Well, that's definitely one of them. Well, never went away for me, but you know, as a history major, everything comes back. So it's just been interesting to see that. But clearly the boom in home baking, which as anybody on this call, you know, I don't know, big surprises. I guess it's in a way not surprised, but it's really great is just to watch how much everybody has managed pretty calmly, or at least overtly pretty calmly through the, you know, all of this, that people are still in the organization, still being kind to each other. They're still, you know, ending meetings with announcements and appreciations. There's still agendas for the meetings. People are collaborating in some ways more than ever. And that, I guess in that sense, you know, it's, as you know, I mean, I've been working a lot on this idea of ecosystem. I actually started the essay for a pamphlet. I mean, I'm just at the beginning of the writing, but, you know, I started it out sort of like you had a healthy ecosystem, and then I don't know what the metaphor is going to end up at, but let's just say a giant fire, you know, ran through it. There's still some health left behind, and how it responds to the disaster, whether it's a fire or an earthquake or a hurricane or typhoon or whatever, is going to show a lot of the health of where we were at. So I guess those things really come to my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, those listening, again, are familiar with Zingermans, familiar with ZingTrain. They know how passionate we are about visioning and writing in the process of writing our preferred future. And BC, before COVID, the organization was in the process of finalizing our 2032 vision, where the organization would be when we turned 50, which is very exciting. How, if at all, has the pandemic changed our outlook on the 2032 vision and visioning in general?
Well, it hasn't changed. I mean, I think it actually hasn't changed for me on either. You know, I think when people, or you also know, because you teach it a lot, but when people are coming at it, you know, like I did 25 years ago or 30 years ago from a kind of cynical, skeptical place, then it's easy to say, what's the point of writing it? Because weird things could happen. And, you know, and that's true. I mean, but then it's sort of like, why get married? Something could happen to the person you're getting married to, or why, you know, why buy a house? There could be a fire. I mean, these are the realities that we all live with. And so I think visioning stands, whether everything worked out exactly as it was or not, it's still equally effective. I guess it is ironic, if you haven't, you probably have, but if you haven't already thought about it, that we wrote one to 2020, and it's only in the gap between when we formalized the new one. So we know when you change your beliefs, you see differently. So one might look at it like the fact that we allowed ourselves to formally not really have a vision is what caused this.
I actually hadn't thought of that, but that's a very interesting point.
So just to reframe it with the belief stuff, but seriously, you know, I mean, this is just me speaking. I haven't really talked to everybody else, but I mean, reflecting it from my end, I thought about the 2032 vision. I don't really think anything changes. I mean, I went back through it. I mean, I think it still stands, you know, and in the same way that it's a different situation. I'm not trying to weigh crises and which one was worse or whatever, but you know, in the same way that in 2000, whatever it was, 8 or 9, you know, Paul and I talked, and it was definitely a little bit of the like, oh my God, what are we going to do? You know, not dissimilar to now. Recovery might be more difficult now or whatever, but either sort of like, well, we know where we're going and we know what our values are, which tell us how we're going to work together. And really none of that's changed. I mean, it's just like we were sailing across the ocean and a giant storm came unexpectedly out of the blue and knocked us way off course, but we're just going to start tacking and get back on course, and we're still going to the same place. So I guess the good news is we're barely into the 2032 vision. So there's my thought.
How have you seen visioning play out specifically during this time? So not just 2032, but in the short term.
You know, although I've tried to manage my life to get rid of guilt, I have like a slight pang of it that we haven't actually written one here, but we've started the conversation about writing like a 1-year one. I kept putting it off in the beginning because I just like, I don't even know if we're going to be open. I don't know if there's going to be human beings left. I don't know if it's going to be, you know, back the way it was, but I think a year now, you know, at this point seems far enough away that we can sort of write one. I think you know the story. I don't know if Kat Gordon's on the call, but you know, in Memphis where they decided to close Muddy's Bakery for a while, did that. From what Maggie told me, I mean, I wasn't there, but she got her staff together and they wrote wrote a vision for what it would be like when they reopened. So, I mean, I thought that was really cool. And I think really, you know, maybe it goes back to the question about what's surprising, but it's not really surprising, but, you know, I've long said that because when you work with something like visioning, it's an approach to life and it's a way of thinking. And that when one does it, like you and I have over really long periods of time, it actually alters your brain through neuroplasticity. And so it's just been interesting really how quickly I think almost everybody here just shifts into like, well, what are we going to do about it? Where are we going? You know, and not into like, woe is me and this sucks. And I think, I don't know, I'm sure there's some people here through, you know, grief and excitement and panic and calm, you know, but I think for the most part, people are sort of over it already. Like, we're just going to figure it out, which is not a formal vision, but it's evidence of the impact that it has on people's thinking process.
Back in mid-March, when it became ZingTrain's business of flying across the country together was going to be heavily impacted, the ZingTrain team was furloughed for about 5 weeks, and we all came back about, I guess, 2.5 weeks ago. And one of the things we did in that first week was write a vision. What is it? And we have 8 weeks of the PPP that we could all come back. What is success going to look like at the end of these weeks? And what does it mean to really, like Katie, our co-managing partner, calls it the 8 weeks of power. And I will say it was really impactful for all of us. What is success going to look like at the end of this time? We don't know what it's going to be after these 8 weeks. And I think it's really brought the ZingTrain team together. So
that's awesome.
Anyone who's interested in visioning, certainly we have a ton of stuff on our website. Reach out to us. We're virtual visioning workshop on this Thursday, May 7th, I believe, at 1:00. Check our website for that too, but hugely impactful. It's certainly impacted all of our lives really heavily. So.
Can people I'm going to forecast people are going to act that vision.
Yeah, I can't see why we wouldn't be
I don't
willing
either.
to share it. Thank you, Ari.
Channel being an attendee.
Sure. ZingTrain at Zingermans.com. I'm managing the inbox today. I'd love to send it to you. So perfect. Yeah, thank you. Another question for you. I've heard you talk several times just over our 17 years of knowing each other, that when someone reaches out to you and asks like to talk or grab coffee or now a virtual coffee, you always yes, because you know you're going to learn something from that person. You don't ever believe it's a waste of time because you know there's something that you will learn. And I just really love that belief. And in this time, these last 6 or 7 weeks, this has certainly been an experience we're all having with lots of people in different ways. What have been some of the things that you have learned during this time?
Well, I'm gonna keep thinking about it as we go. It's a good question. I've already shared some. Does it have to be through a conversation from somebody?
No, just the biggest.
Got it. Well, one thing that's kind is I think I'm rereading it. I feel like I read it like 20 years ago, but Edgar Schein's book, The Culture Survival Handbook, I think it's called. It's not that, it's 160, 70 pages, and it's awesome. And I've been enmeshed in his life a lot over the last 6 weeks. I've been working for 6, 7 months on a humility essay to put in a pamphlet, and one of the upsides, not like I'm not working, but it's given me a little more time at home. Like all the time I spent driving back and forth to work or whatever gets to go into writing or reading. So I've been working on the humility essay, and one of his, Edgar Schein, if you don't know, I wrote about him in part 3. One of the things I really learned from him many ago, which, Joanie and everybody at ZingTrain and probably 80% of the people on the call have heard or read, is his work around styles of leadership for different stages of organizational development. And that's been a huge impact on all of us. Clearly I was already saying we're going through the changing stage, I guess, and I'm just realizing now as we're talking, if I had any doubt, we are definitely going through the changing stage. But anyway, one of his other books is called Humble Inquiry. It's a nice short little one. It's really written sort of for people in consulting, just about how to not approach as like all the answers. But anyway, I used that in the humility essay as a prompt, and then I started to dig deeper into who he was and his life, and I got his autobiography and I read that, and just like a lot of really interesting things about his life that I won't get into now to bore people who are not history. But anyway, he in 1928, and his father was a cosmic ray scientist professor, and they went to Russia to escape Central Europe and then escape Russia, and ended up, long story short, in Chicago, where his dad was a professor in Chicago, and not far from where my family lived when I grew up. And my parents had a laundry in Hyde Park, which is where University of Chicago is. So for all I know, they like laundered his dad's suits, So anyway, but it was just cool to read like about his childhood in Chicago and see how many parallels there were. Anyway, I ended up writing quite a bit, pulling from his learnings. And then at the end of it, I ended up emailing him just to say thank you and how much he had influenced us in a really positive way. Somebody just asked, the book is Humble Inquiry, Edgar Schein. Schein. Anyway, I just emailed him like a note to say thank you so much for how much you've influenced us, and I really appreciate it. And it was fun to read these parallels about youth, growing up in Chicago, and within 6 hours he answers me, "Thank you so much for your beautiful note. Take good care, Ed." And I'm like, he's 92, right? And I'm thinking, like, if I can get to 90, be that grounded and positive and engaged, that would be really awesome. So I have been learning a lot about humility and how getting myself thinking about how to teach it and train it. So that's definitely been a big one too.
What else are you reading right now? Because I know you don't ever just read one book at a
No,
time.
you do. Yes,
there's probably
me
10
well.
to 12 rotation.
Well, I'm reading Maria Popova's book. I often can't remember the titles of books. I'm reading Maria Popova's book. She's who does Brain Pick. If you don't get it, I'm going to highly recommend it. It comes out e-news, which is good. And I've learned a lot about Emily Dickinson, who I never knew anything about. So that's good. And then I just read The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis, which is a lot about beliefs, which was also very interesting and has been interesting around my trying to manage my own frustration around the PPP loans, which we don't have to talk about now. But anyway, so that was very good. And I think there's a few more, but I mentioned Schein's book already. There's another one I can't remember even the title of. It's also kind of about how people think. I can tell you exactly where it is. It's on the left side of the counter, and it's got like a yellow and red and blue.
Just message Tammy really quick, and she'll send the title over.
Good idea. She's very good at finding things.
Oh, I'm sure. So something that we've talking a lot about in our organization, and something that I think is really needed right now is hope, and how hope is. I mean, it's such a critical part of life, and not having hope is very detrimental to, I think, just a person.
Yeah.
And something that has really brought me hope throughout this time, even when I was furloughed, was reading the nightly emails that you sent. Those who don't know, who are not in our organization, Ari is sending out an email to everyone that still goes to the people who are furloughed and maybe not meant to email, but they still can. Just kind of a recap of what the day was, what has happened, and then what we as an organization are hopeful for the future. And it was just such a thread throughout all of them. And I know you're going to be doing a virtual workshop on hope. Emily will give some information on that at the end.
I think it's Tuesday. I hope it is, because I wrote that in my calendar.
Excellent.
But I don't have anything else booked next week.
Keep that date free. We'll let Emily confirm at the end of this. But can you talk about the importance of hope right now?
Yeah, well, it's important. It's funny that if some people on here I know get the weekly e-news I do, I wrote about it, I don't know, two.
Oh, I think Ari froze. I don't know if I'm the only. Are you there, Ari? Cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can.
Okay, for problems, which of course when I have IT do it, it doesn't happen.
Of course.
But anyway, okay. So I wrote about hope 2 or 3 weeks ago in the weekly e-news. If people want it, if they email me at ari@zingermans.com, I'll forward it to them. And then also, if they want to get the e-news, you can go to zingermanscommunity.com, and on the right side color it is. There's a thing for signing up for newsletters, and the one I do is at the top of the list, even though we don't think hierarchically. But anyway, what I realized when I wrote that piece for the weekly e-news is that what you actually just said, which is that I didn't really sit down to write the notes like going, how do I bring hope to people? It just happened. I realized in reflection that it happened because not just me, but again, a lot of people here, you included, have sort of internalized the 6 elements of the Hope Star, which is secret number 45 in part 4 of the business. And that when I went back through a lot of the notes, I was like, really? No, I was doing this, but sure enough, there's like all 6 of these not in the right order, and not, sometimes bigger others, but they were all in there. And so, because I never really even said the word like have hope or anything, but it's clearly came through because you're not, a lot of people made the same comment. What's the impact of hope? I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physician, I'm not a statistical psychologist, and I'm more intuitive. Reading other people who are those things, it seems very clear that hope has a ginormous impact on everything. So people do better in school, athletes perform better, people's leadership skills are better, they're more resilient, their health is better. I mean, it's just like the list is on and on and on and on. And it's already challenging during times where there's no pandemic, and then right now where there's thousands of really legit reasons to feel, but here we are, and on the one hand, yeah, we're all screwed, and on the other hand, we're still going, and so how do we help bring that hope in a meaningful way? And I sent Hall on Friday, Joanie.
I was no.
Maggie asked me to, I don't know. It's what do you say, like when you can't even see people and you're trying to work with them, and but Maggie suggested, not just sort of saying hello.
Oh, we lost you once more. Back.
Okay, great.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Mara, you could email IT while we're will happen because I have later today. Anyway, what I was saying is that Paul often says, and I agree with them, that hope is not a strategy. But what I realized as I reflected is that hope as a strategic tool is a strategic tool. Yeah. It's not just having hope alone without the work behind it is just wishful thinking or magical thinking. But I realized that in a dark and difficult time, respond differently to where they feel hopeful. And because our businesses generally are providing that, even though it's unconscious a lot of the time, as people choose where to go, they're going to choose to go to places where they feel hope. That us being more conscious or more mentally aware of how we're bringing hope, and then making sure as best we can that it's, just like the 3 steps to great service, that it's happening regularly. And then also that it's a tool for you and I and everybody at home too, because, if the people at home aren't hopeful, it's bringing us down. And I'm not blaming them. They have good reasons for it. And a lot of people are dealing with disease, or they live with people working in hospitals, and, it's very difficult. But nevertheless, the hope still helps even in dire situations. And Year's book, which I read a while ago, but I would highly recommend The Choice. She survived Auschwitz. It's a very hopeful book, and she reminds people regularly in the book, and she's like 90 and still teaching and speaking. We get to choose how we approach it, and if she could do that through Auschwitz, then I think we can do it here.
I think in alignment with hope, having hope is a way that I help maintain and manage my energy when I have higher energy. And I think that during this time, having high positive energy is really important when a lot of people are coming to work maybe with lower energy. Yeah. You've been spending a lot of time at the Roadhouse, I believe.
I've been trying to balance.
Yes,
people
and
are
no.
Like, you're over 60, you're not supposed to. Whatever. It's a little weird to ask people up. So yeah, I've been spending some time there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not much.
I'm just curious, kind of, so for the businesses who are still open, they still have people coming in, from your time you have spent there, and then just from what you've heard from the managers and staff that are still there, what are some things that you all have been doing to help keep the energy high while on shift during this time?
Well, I think honestly, it's not really any, that's been sort of what's interesting, or one of the learnings is it's not that different. Like, if you keep doing all the things that we do, then you don't have to rush in, and with some emergency measure, it's more when there's not relative health, then everything quickly comes apart. And I don't mean there's not stress and pressure, but it is you know, I mean, I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago when it was still felt more chaotic. I don't know, maybe it's equally chaotic now, but it felt more chaotic. And, you know, now we're sort of into this new phase where nothing's drastic. Knock on wood. Can't knock on wood at home because someone's at the door and they go crazy. But here, I'm at ZingTrain, I can knock on wood. But, you know, knock on wood, nothing drastic's going to throw us off course in the next week or 2 or 3. But anyway, you know, it's like a super stressful time, and it was kind of a busy night, and they're trying to figure out how to shift to, like, it's become a ghost restaurant, which, if you don't know what that is like a building where people make food, but there's no customers inside. And, you know, each week the sales are growing and they're doing a good job. But anyway, like I look over at like 7:30 and it was kind of busy, and it's a little stressful because it's new, and like Lisa and Bethany are like dancing in the expo station together. And like, you know, I'm like, here you are, you know. And if you read history books, I mean, people found ways even under occupation or bombings or whatever to still find the beauty. And that's actually what I was writing about. I don't know if you read the draft I sent ZingTrain this morning. I'm writing about it for the e-news tomorrow. Is just, you know, trying, even it's not denying the stress. It's not denying the anxiety around us. We can live in the anxiety in a negative way, or we can try to keep finding small things that help pull us forward, even though it's really rough.
Nice. Thank you. I would love at this time to invite Mara and Emily, I think, back to the screen. They were going to come on. They've been monitoring the chat, and I've seen some different questions pop up.
There's a lot of, I can't keep up.
No, and that's okay. They've been doing that for us. So Emily, are there some questions kind of from the group?
I want to thank everyone for the questions and the dialogue. People are asking questions. They're answering each other's questions. This is really fun. Like I'm in an old school chat room or something. We have a lot of great questions here. I'm just going to dig up the document that I am taking notes in. All right. So John would like to know, how coordinated are the activities of each business in the Zingermans community of businesses right now, as each company is a separate entity?
Well, we've tripped a few times. No. How coordinated? I guess roughly what they are normally. So the partners normally we meet. We have the ZCOP huddle, Zingermans wide huddle, once a month for 3 hours. And then also the partners, you know, meet for more just background conversation and, you know, sharing stuff once a month for 3 hours also. But we've gone to 2 hours roughly, sometimes 3, twice a week for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I think in that sense, there's probably more conversation than normal, but that makes, because you know, the day-to-day reality, well, the truth is it's always changing more than people give it credit for. This time, right now, it's changing pretty drastically. You know, one day you're like in Brussels and the next day you're in Bangkok, and you kind of adjust pretty quickly. And so that's been happening. But that said, I mean, part of why we set up this model was to create a setting in which there's more autonomy, so people didn't have to wait for headquarters. And you know, I think that's working because people aren't waiting for permission, and wouldn't want them to. And they're not waiting for permission to put a new product on, you know, or make a significant shift in the business. They're doing what needs to get done, which I think is awesome. You know, Joanie prompted on hierarchy earlier, and when you asked, and I was thinking about, I heard General Stanley McChrystal speak at one of Vern Harnish's Gazelles conferences that Mara set up the keynote for, back when you could have keynotes, back in the old days. You know, but anyway, he spoke on Monday morning and I spoke on Tuesday, Bottom Line Change, and it was shocking. I had heard of him, but I really didn't know much about his work or his philosophy. And it was shocking to me how similar the approaches were, him coming as a retired general from the American military and me coming, you know, as more of an anarchistic pacifist. And yet we were saying, you know, 95% the same stuff. And part of what he brought up is, like, you know, how hierarchy was ineffective and that the military needed to come to terms with that, and that he gave the stories of, I'm going to apologize. I don't remember if it was Iraq or Afghanistan, but where they were out, you know, dealing at that time with Al Qaeda. And he said, like, you know, we're, you know, the troops are sending in a note to headquarters, you know, saying like this happened, and then they're sending it to the regional headquarters, and they're sending it to the next one up the line, and it goes to Washington, and then they're sending it back down. By the time the message gets back down, it tells people it already moved because they don't have a headquarters. They just are taking care of what they need to do on the front. And I think that's the same here. Like, no one's waiting for permission. They're just doing what needs to be done.
Totally.
So yes, they're coordinated, but yes, people are moving without waiting for permission.
Absolutely. So Lawrence had a great question about the art of business, which I remember when we did a webinar on that back last spring. So thinking back to the art of business, what is the role of it during this time, would you say?
Well, it's funny because I just wrote about it, draft up for tomorrow's e-news, which will come out tomorrow afternoon. But I think it's the same. I mean, there's, you know, I love the Oscar Wilde quote, we're all laying in the same gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. And I think that's true. I mean, so, you know, the beauty exists, coexists simultaneously with the pain. That's always been true. It's true now. And I think it's easy to get pulled into the, you know, whatever the word is, the maelstrom negativity. And it's not that these problems don't exist. I mean, people are sick, people are dying, businesses are in difficult, including ours, in difficult positions, you know, many in worse than ours. No one knows what's happening. Schools are out, you know, all of this stuff is going on. But the truth is, I appreciate all you guys, and I'm looking over this list. I see Wayne Mullins on there, just like tons of amazing people on this call right now, which boosts my energy. I love that plant over your shoulders.
Oh, me? It's fake. It's fake.
I know, it was a joke. I was just like trying to take in the detail, and but anyway, I wrote about for tomorrow to see Tammy at the Tam Chop Farms, where she's my significant other, and she has a hoop house, and she's getting her seedlings going. And it's just, you know, like I wrote about it, like in another day of Zoom meetings and trying to figure out the PPP loans and going crazy. And, you know, but I went out there, and, you know, it was just like out there, there's no PPP loans, and the plants aren't really worried about coronavirus. The dog, you know, happened to be a day where in gray, and but then somehow, like right around when I got there, it just happened to clear up, and I put this photo into the e-news. You know, that it was like Pepper just laying in the field and like looking at the sunset. And I'm sure he wasn't actually looking at the sunset. He was waiting for a bird to chase, but it looked like he was looking at the sunset. And it was just so beautiful, you know, and I like, you know, it go away. It's not a vaccine. It's not the cure for people that are on ventilators, you know, but it still helps to get through the day, which we need to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm actually we've got a couple more minutes for questions. I noticed
I'm in no rush. So
no, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. So I just wanted to mention to folks about next week's workshop. So you were right, Ari, it is next Tuesday. If I'm doing my math right, the 12th, from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So around the same time, called Inspiring Hope in the Workplace. It's going to be $50 a seat. I am going to be including a link to that in the chat right now.
Oh, Mara
already did.
Oh, Mara already did. She's the best. Oh, great. She's so on top of it. So, you know, we're going to be including info on that in the follow-up. But as people kind of start to get on with their day, I just wanted to make sure to mention that. Everyone. Yeah, really looking forward to that session next week. Talking more about hope in the workplace. Back to questions. some really great ones here. Let me just look here. Jennifer had a great question. Jennifer is with the Interlochen Center from Northern Michigan.
What art of business?
Yeah, so she said they're focusing on how constraints can provoke creativity. So what creative ways that you adapted Zingermans that you'll hold on to regardless of when we go back to quote unquote normal?
Well, I think we're not going, I think normal is an illusion that we make up in order to calm our anxiety. So the truth is there's been 2 days that were the same. There's never been, 2 days where something wasn't altered from day to the next. It's just, this is a lot of alteration, burst of time. But if you have an earthquake, it's not like everything just goes back to the way it was. It's just that you rebuild in new ways and on we go. So, I'm sure there's going to be stuff that comes out of it. I know everybody's saying like everything's going to go to Vince. I was reading the New York Times, had the article about why Zoom wasn't so great on the week, which I can't remember the writer's name, but very humorously said the difference between a Zoom call and getting together person to do the same learning or meeting is the difference between a blueberry muffin you buy from a fast food place in plastic to a home baked one. And I always remember Veronica, who's made Maline's cheese, who passed away, but she said the difference between pasteurized milk and raw milk is the difference between a plastic sheep and a real sheep. And I know that's an exaggeration, but anyway, so I don't know, some things will change, but I think that in some ways for me, it's also learning, like I said, how much actually works. Listening skills are the same. Hope is the same. These are human things that have been important for millennia. I've been reading some on, of course, the pandemic of 1918 and 19 with the Spanish flu and reading about the bubonic plague because I'm a history major. And so it's just interesting how people got through it, and they did. And, in our world, I try to remind them there were still restaurants at the end of 1919, even though even more people died and it was even worse, so I'm hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are a lot of new products though out, like the bakehouse is selling flour like crazy. And we started this thing called Zing Share if people are in town, where we're at, a little bit like a CSA would be, like each business picks something that's good that week and then we put it together in one box to make it easy. I mean, stuff like that might continue. Fried chicken sandwiches that are selling, they're flying out the door.
Hungry. Yeah, sounds delicious. Great, cool.
There's still time you can go on now, and they actually have a now ordering, which we never had.
Fantastic.
So while you're sitting here, while I'm answering the question, you can order.
Right down the street from me too, which is great. I think we probably have time for one more question, but before we get to the question, I just wanted to mention Joanie brought up something in the chat. It's really important. Joanie is going to be hosting actually ZingTrain office hours.
Virtual office hours.
Everything quotes. It's just really fun. Yeah, virtual office hours. We're really excited. So she'll be hanging around today from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time for anyone who wants to keep talking. She's happy to answer questions. We can continue to provide you with some of the resources and just continue the conversation. The link is in the chat, and the chat will be asking. I've heard that the chat is available with the recording as well, so we'll be sure to share this out with folks.
Yeah, let me answer a question in the chat. Is yes, you don't know without looking if the bakehouse is still baking gluten-free bread. Does anybody know? You would know, Emily.
You think I would know because I'm gluten-free, but I do not know.
Okay, well, you can get it with no bun at the least, but we do fried chicken, and we don't right now have delivery actively to the UP, but if you want to pay, we will send somebody up.
Fantastic. Happy to.
You can use the sales, and you could probably, it would be an awesome story that you would for the rest of your life, how you paid Zingermans to drive a fried chicken sandwich to UP.
It would. It really would.
Very socially distanced.
Exactly. So we're going to get one more question. I realize we'll probably be going over the 12:15 mark for folks. So if you want to stick around while we answer that, feel free to. With your day, just know we really appreciate the recording. And probably the next day or so. So just to be sure to look out for that if you have to hop off.
I feel like
but really,
with the recording, we should do it like on albums where they have the secret track at the end. That like you should cut the recording off before the end so that.
Oh, I like that.
You know,
Yeah.
like the mystery part that was only done live and recreated.
Exactly. I love that. That's great. So the question, Ari, is going to be about your thoughts on maintaining servant leadership. Lindsay asked a great question about maintaining servant leadership during this time. So she says she's seeing a lot of scrambling from both for and nonprofit businesses to bring in money, period. So she's wondering what we might continue to lead, how we continue to lead and do business from a place of service and act in abundance when the world is so focused on scarcity right now.
Well, just going really quickly, it's the same. I was thinking about running, you know, like really slow runner, but I'm out there every day. And so it's like, what's the difference between running yesterday when it was 60 or 58 and sunny and beautiful and running in January when it's 16 and there's snow? You know, I go a little slower and I'm a little more careful if that's possible. But it's the same thing. So I think servant leadership now is really no different. It's the same points, and the idea is to build the rigor around it. So it's the way we think, and we just get it in a good way of doing it every day and stick with it.
Absolutely. Great. Well, we have a ton of other questions here, so to your questions during this time, but we will get back to you with answers. And remember, Joanie will be around at 1 p.m. Happy to continue the conversation. So thanks, Joanie, for being available. We are recording this. We will send it out to you probably in the next 24 hours or so. If you've gone to the ZingTrain website, you've probably noticed it looks very different. So we happen to launch a website, a new website on the same week that we're launching all kinds of new things. There's just a lot going on over here. It's really an exciting time at ZingTrain. So you'll have that link. Feel free to share it with friends, colleagues, family, neighbors, strangers, anyone. And we also will be posting a link next week in the chat. So, and in the follow-up email, which is lots of logistics to cover. Thank you. I want to take the time to thank you all for joining. Thank you, Ari, for your time.
Thanks to all those amazing people. It's like I'm inspired just by y'all being on there.
Yeah, and Joanie, thanks again. We got some people's videos showing up. I love it. Thanks to Joanie again. Hi there, Lawrence. For moderating today, and Mara for helping me one-man the chat. It's been really great. So we hope to see you all again very soon. And take care and be well.
Thanks, Emily. Joanie, here's to 17 more years.
Yeah. Well, we'll still be here. So thank you all. Have a good one.
Everyone.